Welcome to the Wyoming Women's Business Center's 2021 webinar series. Today's presentation is 10 Ways Introverts Can Succeed at Business Networking. I'm Christine Langley with the Wyoming Women's Business Center, and I'm going to be your speaker today. You'll notice the Zoom webinar bar on the bottom or top of your screen, depending on your orientation. And I just want to call attention to the questions panel. If you have any questions during the webinar today, I'd like you to use those to communicate with me. And then immediately following this presentation, we're also going to launch a survey. And so I ask you to stay on the line and complete that survey because it provides us and our funding partners with valuable information. So everybody that's on the call today is muted just to minimize background noise. So once again, if you have any questions during the presentation, just type them into that questions panel and we'll get to it at the end. So we're going to get started today with some information about the Wyoming Women's Business Center. And then we're going to dive right into our topic and finish up with Q&A at the end. This is a 30-minute format, and we appreciate everybody joining us today on what might be your lunch hour. Now, this is being recorded and it's going to be available on our YouTube channel. You can always go to our YouTube channel and just search for Wyoming Women's Business Center at youtube.com. You can subscribe to our channel so you see every time we post a new video, or you can check out any of our other business education content that we've provided over the last several years. Just a ton of content and information on that YouTube channel for you. All right, so for those of you that are new to us, we are the Wyoming Women's Business Center. We're a nonprofit organization, and our mission is to enable and empower Wyoming entrepreneurs. And of course, we have a special emphasis on women, and specifically women that are economically or socially disadvantaged. And so we do our work through three distinct programs. The first is our one-on-one business counseling and our training program. This webinar is an example of that training. It's always free. The second is our microloan program, and we offer loans anywhere from $500 to $50,000 for businesses that have been denied from a traditional lending source. And then the third is our Artist Development Center, and we run that in conjunction with our Works of Wyoming store that's in downtown Laramie. All right, so let's dive into our topic today on 10 ways introverts can succeed at business networking. Now, if you missed my first webinar this month, it was on what is business networking and why is it important. So I encourage you to go to our YouTube channel under Wyoming Women's Business Center and review that one as well if you're interested in this topic. And so today I'm going to start with just a bit of background that can be helpful. Now, we know that networking provides pools of experts that range from competitors all the way to potential clients. And networking allows you the opportunity to offer something in exchange for services, advice, knowledge, and contacts. But lots of self-described introverts feel that the networking field is just not built for them. And walking into a room like they own it, or striking up a conversation with a stranger, or dazzling people with their ease and charm, those are the so-called perfect ingredients that seem to be required in order to win at networking. And so today we're going to bust some of those myths and really take an honest look at what it really means to be introverted. So some of the common misperceptions include myths like introverts hate being with people, or introverts aren't good at interacting with others, or introverts need to be rescued from social situations. And really, those myths just could not be further from reality. Introversion and extroversion really just point to the way that people like to recharge. It doesn't point to a lifetime sentence of social awkwardness, right? The two actually aren't related. So according to Myers-Briggs Foundation, introverts tend to build up their energy in a quiet space by themselves. And extroverts actually get energized when they're surrounded by people and activity. So remember, introversion, just as extroversion, it's really just a preference and a tool. And so if you understand it and accept it, then you can create a strategy to use it for your own maximum benefit. And you may even find that introversion is the secret sauce for boosting your business and your career. So yes, introverts can network with great success. And today we're going to cover 10 tips for introverts to try. And I'll just give you guys a spoiler alert. I am an introvert myself. And so I use a lot of these tools at my disposal when I network. All right, so first tip is I want you to honor the way that you recharge. There's nothing wrong with being an introvert and recharging and recovering alone or in your own space. And I'd really be remiss if I didn't take time to mention the other type on this continuum, which is recognized as ambivert. And an ambivert is someone who is on the continuum and they're like in between an extrovert and an introvert. And it really means that they can recharge both ways, right? By themselves and around other people. So don't be surprised if you're somewhere in between. Sometimes you do get energy by being around a group of people, and other times you need to be by yourself. It just means you're an ambivert. So know yourself and honor the way that you recharge. So, for those of us that are really true introverts, I think it's important that you prepare to go into a networking event because it's going to stretch your comfort zone. And make sure that you allow for an adequate buildup of energy. So that means thinking twice about hosting a get together, going to a party, or hanging out with coworkers the night before, right? Instead, I want you to do something that has like a proven track record of making you feel energized. So for me, sometimes that's, doing some reading or taking a walk outside or maybe a relaxing bath. Maybe it's just going to bed a little bit earlier for you, right? So the same goes for your post event recovery. You want to build in a cushion of time and space around the networking event, and you'll perform a lot better. So you may even entertain the idea of doing it again in the future, right? If you prepare and recharge before and after the event. All right, next up, I like you to set reasonable expectations and then try to focus on giving and not getting. So going into a networking event with no plan is really just a recipe for wasting time. So wrong expectations can really derail the value that you get from attending an event in the first place. So be sure that you spend some time just reflecting on what you want to accomplish and then set some reasonable expectations that are going to play to your strengths. So if you really are not a social butterfly and it's just not a natural fit for your personality, then don't set an expectation that you're going to collect 25 business cards in an hour, right? Set out to make one or two meaningful connections that's going to suit you better, and it'll prove to be a lot more productive in the long run. So I also always recommend to my fellow introverts that you try to show up during what I call the introverts hour. Right? It's the first hour of the event when people are just filtering in. It's okay to be first. It's when people are looking to find a conversation partner. And it can be a really natural opener if you're one of the people, one of the first people in the room that is welcoming people as they come in. So the best way to network is to really try to give before you get. And I find that it's really a good life practice because everything that you give, you often get back tenfold. So as an introvert, this is a great way to network because you don't have to be nervous about the get or asking for a favor or asking for a sale, right? We're not selling, we're networking. So you're simply offering your help, and that's going to be almost always embraced with open arms. And so it can sound something like this, right? Is there anything I can help you with? Now, the key to this strategy is actually following through. So, if someone asks you for something, then I want you to try and do your best to deliver it and do it quickly. I like to follow a 2-for-1 recipe, right? I give twice as much as I ask in return. All right, another tip is to ask for introductions. So, walking into a conference hall or a networking event where you really don't know anyone can be kind of nerve wracking. And it's nerve wracking for everyone, right? Not just introverts. So, if you're worried that you're going to freeze up and kind of waste the opportunity, then try recruiting some help. You can approach maybe one of the panel moderators if you're at an event, or maybe there's an event organizer for the networking hour. You want to introduce yourself and then ask for their help, ask for their advice, right? Who do they think you should meet? Would they mind making an introduction for you? Remember that the organizers of an event, they really want it to be a successful experience for you, right? That's why they're putting on the event. So they're typically ready to help. And in order for this approach to be effective, you really need to reflect on what your goals are beforehand and try to help the other person make a meaningful and specific suggestion. So you want to focus on what's unique about your situation and your goal for the event. And then you can also provide value to others. So I'm just going to give you a quick example here. I own a small business and we do professional floor care like carpet cleaning, and we do deep cleaning of tile and grout. So most of our business comes from real estate agents and property managers. And so my ask might sound something like this. Hey, I own a floor cleaning business, and what makes us really unique is that we're a one-stop shop, right? If you walk on it, we likely work on it, and all the way down to carpet stretching and repairs. And right now, we're offering some carpet cleaning rates, like special rates for referrals from real estate agents and property managers. And so, do you know any people that are in those industries, or even people that could introduce me to people that are in those industries? So I was specific enough in my ask there, but I kept it broad enough that really whoever I ask ought to be able to come up with someone that they can connect me with, right? And I drove home my uniqueness, my competitive advantage, that we're a full service company, we can handle almost any job out there, right? So you don't have to go to a bunch of different vendors. All right, next up on the list is listen more and try to talk a little less. So this is going to come naturally, probably if you're an introvert, and it can also be surprisingly effective. So think about the last time someone really listened to what you had to say without interrupting, without looking at a cell phone or losing their focus, right? True listening is pretty rare nowadays, and it's why we value it so much. So try to treat the person in front of you as if they had the power to write about you on the front page of the New York Times, right? You want to be curious, you want to be present, and try to be patient. And then I also want to talk a little bit more about your phone. And my recommendation is that you put it away. So think about what people do in uncertain social situations, right? Some people eat, some people drink, and virtually everyone pulls out their smartphone. And so it's just become the ultimate accessory to sort of make yourself look busy and important, even if the truth is you're just scrolling through your Instagram feed. So you might feel safe, sort of hidden behind that virtual wall, but looking at your phone can really prevent other people from engaging with you. And that's the reason you're there. So remember, if you can't control your schedule and your life to allow for like 30 minutes of uninterrupted time, then that actually says something about you. So as you prepare to walk into a networking event, I want you to put that phone somewhere that you really can't access it that easily. And then set yourself a time limit and say that, you're not going to check this phone again for at least 30 minutes. All right, preparing unusual questions and icebreakers. So if you're nervous that you're not going to find the right words when it's time to start a conversation, then I always recommend that you do your homework ahead of time and bring some of those ideas with you. They can be anything from unusual questions to fresh icebreakers, and having a few options at the ready means that you're going to feel more comfortable just initiating contact. So it can make you more effective and it can make you more memorable. So I'm going to cover a few right now. And so if you open up the chat box, you'll see that I've put some examples in there. And so you can just go in there and copy and paste to your own document, and then hopefully add to these categories. So in the right circumstances, really a classic conversation opener can work well. And the key is to pick one that's honest and really authentic to you. But if you're uncomfortable at networking events, then I just want you to own your discomfort. And you might find that a literal vulnerability can actually create instant rapport with a lot of people, because it's possible that they're feeling the same way. So remember that compliments in a professional setting, they really work best when, number one, they're appropriate, but then also sincere. And so most of us are really naturally curious. We just, for some reason, hesitate to ask questions or give compliments that sort of come to our mind. So be polite, be courteous, be friendly, and kind of take your filter off a little bit and tell people what you're thinking. Again, as long as it's appropriate. So, okay, so let's start with some classic icebreakers. Notice that, like, where are you from is one of them. And that can be a good alternative to that tired old, what do you do type opener. Where are you from kind of allows the other person to take the response in a variety of different directions. And so while they might talk about their company or their department that they work in, if it's a recent graduate, they might talk about their college or their university. Another person might talk about their hometown or even a different country, right? If you're talking to someone with an international background. So people's connections to schools and companies and places, they really can contain like great cues to their own personal stories. And that's why this short question can provide like a lot of fertile ground for real conversation. And then you'll see in that chat box, I've got a few other sort of classic icebreakers, and you can build on that. All right, next up is location conversation starters. And so openers that are really specific to location or temperature, weather, or events, those are really easy to create like on the spot. And so the key is to just not overthink it. And so your comment about, the freezing temperature in the room, this is a consistent one for me because I'm literally always cold, especially at those networking events. It may not be the most brilliant thing that the other person has heard all day, but it doesn't really have to be, because your goal is just to open the door to an exchange and make the other person feel comfortable and maybe connect. So you can ask anything from, I've never been here before, how about you, to, oh, what's your favorite appetizer so far, that they've been serving. All right, finally, the unexpected questions. So unexpected conversation openers, they come with a measure of risk. So I'll say that up front. They have a way of making the other person kind of pause or raise their eyebrows, but also maybe pay attention. So professional networking functions, sometimes they can get a little stuffy and with everybody talking about the same thing. So out of the ordinary questions can stand out. It's always a good idea to use your best judgment and try to match the question with the person or the people that you're addressing. So I've given you some examples of unexpected questions like, what do you do for fun during the holidays? A riskier one might be, if you could put up a billboard anywhere in the world, what would it say, right? So I encourage you to take this list and then just expand on it for yourself. Come up with a couple in each category that you can utilize and then commit to using it at your next networking event. All right, expect some awkwardness and then try to be patient. So just because you arrive energized and prepared, doesn't mean that everything during the networking event is going to go 100% smoothly. Human interactions are just messy. And so it's okay. You can expect some awkwardness and maybe even some false starts. So if you're feeling anxious, if the event is feeling like a waste of time, or if you had a bad experience like early on, right when you first got there, just give yourself an out and try not to leave too quickly. Instead, set a time limit for how long you're going to stay, and try to get a feel for the room, pick up a snack or a drink, try starting with a few conversations. And you might be surprised to find yourself warming up to the event, and maybe even staying longer past your 30 or 45-minute limit. So the ultimate goal of networking really isn't to beat your own personal record in collecting the most business cards per hour, especially if it's a party-like atmosphere. You're at the event to try and make meaningful connections, because long-term business growth is really built on a foundation of human relationships. It's not about your 30-second elevator pitch. So I want you to try and be patient. Treat every person as if they could offer you the opportunity of a lifetime. And if you meet someone that you'd really love to add to your professional network, or you just find interesting, then make a plan to have lunch or coffee with them the following week. All right, this is a big one for a lot of people, and I call it managing your inner critic. Um, this is necessary for a lot of people going into networking events because they can bring out just the worst in what I like to call your saboteur voice, right? So you may hear things in your head like, you don't deserve to be here, you're boring, no one's going to want to talk to you, everybody's looking at you because you're so awkward, along with a few others I'm sure everyone on the webinar today, could add to the messages that they get in their head. So these ideas can really play on repeat inside your head, and they can lower your confidence and make you feel like coming to the event was a mistake. And so guess what? It's the same for most of us, regardless of whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. So I just want you to do your best to try and shut that inner critic off, or at least lower the volume of the negative mental chatter. And just try to remind yourself that you've got the credentials and the experience to be there, and that lots of people are going to find you interesting, and everyone is far too busy with their own drama and their own inner voices to pay any attention to your every move. Okay. So, with that, it's really important to tell yourself the right things. So, there's a Wharton professor named Adam Grant, and he wrote a book called Originals, and he sort of explored public speaking. And when people told themselves that they were excited about their speaking event, their delivery was a lot better than when they told themselves that they were nervous. So, this is called recontextualizing your feelings, and it can really affect your performance. So, if you're nervous in conversations, you don't have to speak the entire time. Just use some insights to demonstrate your intelligence and your skill rather than trying to speak continuously. It's really not necessary. All right, networking events can be draining, especially for an introvert. We know this. So fuel up and hydrate before you step through the door. I want you to aim for like a small meal or a snack. I always tell my clients, watch your caffeine intake, especially if you're already feeling a little anxious. So the same goes for alcohol. A glass of wine might look like a great idea, but you want to avoid anything that might compromise your image as a professional. So if approaching even one person, kind of scares you, then just take it one step at a time, right? A concept of peak human performance tells us that we're actually happiest when we're doing something that's just slightly outside our comfort zone. So I want you to start with a safety net. So for example, walk up to a stranger, maybe with a colleague or a friend in tow. Start the conversation and then maybe let your friend take over. If you've done this a few times, then take the conversation further, right? Maybe tell a story. If that intimidates you, then practice the delivery ahead of time on your friends or colleagues or a family member. All right, smile and challenge yourself. So you don't always have to initiate, but if you're hiding against the wall with your arms crossed, then you're not giving off a very approachable vibe. So try to relax and smile and look as warm and casual as you can. It'll open the door for someone to walk up to you and start the conversation. So I always encourage my clients to consider like a networking challenge. One of mine every month is to meet with 4 people that I know and 4 people that I don't know. And so setting some goals around networking activity, it not only gives you some newfound confidence and kind of a clear sense of direction, but it can also result in referrals. So even if you don't go this far, I just want to encourage you to think about how you can challenge yourself to sort of step outside of your comfort zone just a little bit. And it might have really great results. All right, last but not least, I want you to have a post-event plan. So many introverts, they're kind of tempted to, breathe out a sigh of relief and then curl up in a room by themselves for a week, like following a large networking event, because it can be really exhausting. And I don't want you to feel like you have to send a batch of like generic nice to meet you emails within 24 hours. But over 2 or 3 days after the event, you really should find some time to send messages to the professionals that you want to stay in touch with, because otherwise the networking event isn't going to have the long lasting impact that you want it to have. So keep your outreach to these people brief, but personal. And try to mention like a specific detail that you remember about the conversation. If someone, say, was really generous with advice, then let them know what you've done with it or what you plan to do with it. And if you'd like to meet them again for coffee, then suggest that as a next step. It's always a good idea to give everybody an out, because when you're interacting with busy professionals, you don't want to assume that they're going to be available. But you do want to let them know that their time and expertise would mean a lot to you. And gratitude is actually the key to successful networking. right? We love to be around people that are gracious and compliment us. So here's what an email might sound like, or look like. Let's say I met somebody named Mike. So I might say, "Hi, Mike. Hey, it was great to meet you at that Financial Planning Association event earlier this week. I really appreciate your advice to reach out to the conference organizers and get involved. And so I contacted Susan, the president of the board, and was excited to offer my help with coordinating the next event." And our conversation got me thinking about really exploring professional opportunities like within the local financial planning firms. And so I was wondering if you'd be open to a meeting with me for like 15 or 20 minutes over coffee sometime next week. Let me know. All right, so introverts can be really great at networking, but true networking or connecting deeply with other professionals is really, it's actually a core strength for a lot of introverts. Um, in order to get the most out of a networking event, encourage you to try and choose the right event for you. So a noisy rooftop bar reception is probably going to be less productive and a lot more stressful for you than, say, a fireside chat, right? So think about the environment that really positions you to be at your best and try to opt into the more advantageous events for you first. So I'll give you an example. So me personally, I don't drink alcohol. So attending happy hour networking events, it really is not my best environment, right? I do better at breakfast meetings and coffee hours. I do really good at volunteer activities. And so knowing yourself and really picking the event that makes sense for you in your business can really help you be successful. All right, so just a quick recap, and then I'll take some questions if anybody has any. I want you to remember to honor your preferences by recharging your batteries before the event and try to fuel up with some nutritious food. Prepare a few icebreakers ahead of time and be ready. Give yourself a minimum time limit before you sneak out the back door. And then stack the deck in your favor by asking for some introductions. Remember, those organizers want the event to be successful for you, so they're going to be ready and able to help. And then always have a game plan for that post event follow up. And above all, I want you to look for ways and opportunities to really reclaim networking and make it work for your own personal style. What we're looking for here is lifelong professional connections. And really, we're trying to build a world class network. So that's not going to happen overnight, right? Going to one networking event isn't going to get it done. So just like growing your business, take it one step at a time and try to be consistent. All right, guys. So if you open up that questions panel, you can type in some questions for me. And as you're doing that, I'm just going to cover a few of our closing slides. So the Wyoming Women's Business Center is made possible through lots of partnership agencies, but our primary funding comes from the U.S. Small Business Administration, and that grant that we get from them is matched by the Wyoming Business Council. And so we're really thankful for all of the guidance and support from all of our partners and look forward to the work ahead. If you need some contact information for the Women's Business Center, we do have one-on-one business counseling through Jonathan Howdyshell, and then I'm the business education director. If you'd like to reach out to me directly, this is my contact information. Okay, so these are our webinars for the month. We've actually gotten through these first three now. Today's was 10 ways introverts can succeed. And the next is how to expand your social network on Thursday, July 29th. And so I encourage you to RSVP for that by going to wyomingwomen.org and clicking on training to register for free. All right, guys, let's take a look at our questions panel and see what we got. It says, I cannot find the examples. Where are they located? Okay, I put them in the chat box. So if you just go to chat, says I do not see the examples here. Okay, well, I clicked them in there. They're showing up for me for panelists and attendees, but I'm happy to send them out in the recordings email that I send out after this wraps. So I apologize if anybody can't see that in the chat panel. All right, guys, thank you so much for attending the webinar today. Stay on the line with me just a couple minutes and complete our survey. And I hope everybody has a great week. Bye-bye.